Hi, everybody out on YouTube. Welcome to the Cowboy Perspective. I've got just an interesting, super smart businessman on the show today who happens to run a podcast as well. And we're just going to explore all kinds of things that have to do with Chance Conrado.
Yeah, look at you go. Yeah, that's how you know someone's listened. I've been on other people's shows who didn't maybe listen to things before or asked me to do something. They were like, they didn't know much about the podcast, which is fine. But it's always funny if somebody asks you to do something they don't know shit about you. It's kind of like, oh, this is a little weird.
Well, where did y'all come up with that little intro? Because I think that is kind of brilliant marketing. It's stuck in my head. I can't get it out.
Yeah, here's the funny thing about that. That was 100% authentic. So we had a rodeo announcer, specific one, say, hey, we're thinking we want to do an intro. This is way back when we were starting the Gauge, and it was a long process putting all that together before it ever came to fruition, just because I was a chicken shit about some of it. But we asked him to do it. And this has always been the funny thing with my dad, my mom, my sisters when we rodeo. Most of the time, for whatever reason, now thanks to my sister Ivy's success in the arena, nobody really messes up the name and all the other things that are tied to it. But they always screwed it up. Sure enough, this guy's reading the little pitch that the gals in the office sent over, and he says my name wrong. That was real. He just screwed up my name, and we're like, that's pretty dang funny.
Yeah,
let's just keep that. Yeah. So,
well, it's catchy. I think you had a good ear there, because I'm not even sure I can pronounce your name the right way, but Conrado plays in my head right and left every time I think about the Gauge. Now, if I think about it hard, I can say, okay, it's Conrado, I can get it right. But,
right.
I think even in my own show, it makes me think, am I doing a thing that is going to replay in people's head like that? So, kudos to you guys. That's just a really great way to start the show.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was always funny because obviously Conrado is synonymous with top line barrel horses. And that's what my parents did. That's what my dad's always been known for. He's the guy you go to if you need to fix your horse. You want to try to get to the NFR, he's going to coach you there. And obviously he did that well with my sisters. But the funny thing that started happening to me as an adult when I had left the ranch because I got fed up with it. And I mean, you had mentioned to me outside that your goal was to work on your dad's ranch. The way that we grew up, I didn't have any other skills besides riding horses. Nothing. None of us did, because my dad started riding horses. It's the only job he ever had from 10 years old. So sure enough, he's got one skill. He's going to teach us that one skill only. Which can be a gift and a curse, depending on what your outlook on life is and what you want. But it was always this thing where, I didn't realize his name's Kelly, that Kelly had a son. So that was kind of the joke where they're like, they messed up my name. Well, no one knows who I am anyway. My name's Chance Conrado. It's not Conrado. So it was like just this whole funny joke that no one would be in on unless I just go on a long-winded pitch and explain it.
Right. So you bet. Well, anyways, thanks for exploring that. I just think it's great. Now you started talking about some of the stuff I'm interested in. I grew up, I used to crawl into my mom and dad's bedroom and sleep by the side of my dad's bed. So when he got up, he'd hopefully step on me, wake me up, and I get to go with him. That was just how much I loved it. It's one reason I want to bring you on the Cowboy Perspective and give my audience some more insight into the Gauge. One of my guests said, I always like to ask my guests, well, what podcast do you pay attention to? What do you listen to? What is some stuff you think other people listening might enjoy? The Gauge was mentioned. So that's where I first got introduced to it.
Sure.
But I love the Western lifestyle. I love the lessons that are in life as a horse trainer, cowboy. I think horsemanship is almost one of the best ways to think about parenting, running a business, a lot of things. So go back to that, what was a day in your life as a kid? Tell me about that.
Well, so there's a lot of interesting aspects of my childhood, and I've obviously because the way that I started to gauge was with my sister Ivy, kind of explaining a little bit about all that, and it was focused around her journey to becoming a, multi-million-dollar barrel racer at a, she hadn't even hit 30 yet, and she went to her first NFR before she could drink a beer, and that was always the goal in our family. It was surrounded around barrel horses. Everybody knows that, and a lot of that's thanks to Ivy and, of course, my dad Kelly and what have you, but everything we did from the beginning of my memory as a child, when I started having or if I can replay that didn't come out right. Sometimes I tie my words up. But right. It was all about barrel horses, right? My dad was pretty handy with a rope and things like that. But for whatever reason, the idea around that race, which is barrel racing, fascinated my dad. And usually you don't think men when you think of barrel racing, especially around here. You go to the East Coast, different story. I certainly always hated the stigma surrounded around men involved in barrel racing, which is why I specifically didn't want to do it, because I don't want anybody to think I'm a sissy barrel racer.
Right.
But that's not really the case, right? Why is it, and this is just a tiny thing that I've thought about as an adult because I used to be ashamed of it for whatever reason. Why is it that a bunch of big, rough, tough men can run a horse in a straight line and stop and measure their slide, and that's a tough deal? But someone going 9-0 on a freaking rocket donkey, turning a metal barrel that could chop your leg off, doing that 3 times and then running into a fence, can't be associated with being cowboy? Well, it's just perception, right? And the WPRA set up barrel racing for the women, as they should. They needed their outlet, but I just don't see it as a hyper feminine sport necessarily, because I think if you start saying that barrel racing's feminine, it takes away from actually how difficult that pursuit is, and it actually is almost disrespectful to women in a way to say that, well, it's so girly. It is not. You can get your shit rocked, and if you don't know,
if you don't think it's scary, fellas, come ride one.
Yeah,
I'm telling you. I was saying this the other day. Just riding a horse is a workout. Like, people think, oh, no, it's not. They're doing the work. No, really, it's a workout for
get on a 2-year-old for the first time. Do that twice. That's what I did for my entire, getting back to the actual thing you asked, is we trained horses. We were a horse training outfit. We didn't have cows. We didn't even have damn chickens. We tried a couple ducks one time. The coyotes got them. That was the end of that. Yeah. But it was barrel horses.
What part of the world did you grow up in?
Colorado. And, of course, like a lot of people do in their early career, my parents had us real young. I mean, we're talking 21 years old. And so they packed me up, and then, of course, my sisters all followed real close after. We're all about a year apart, a little more. Yeah. So we were all more or less the same age. As adults now, it's like 28, 29, 30, right? Just real close in age. But they would do what people did. You train for outfits, you train for owners, and you take your barrel horses to the fraternities. That's what they did. Till they broke away. My parents split up. I went with my dad. He continued to do that. He's ridden for a lot of, Myers. You think Frenchman's Guy. Well, back before Frenchman's Guy was a huge deal, Kelly showed him for them, right? Cragos, you think not Packin' Sixes, you think why the name's escaping me. I should know that. I used to live with them.
So I try to help you, but I'm not.
Yeah.
I am not as astute in the barrel racing.
PC Bronson, there it is. But either way, neither here nor there.
I hear Potter a lot. Is that?
Sure.
I guess that's. Is that another name that?
Yeah, there's a ton of them, right? I mean, the barrel horse market is in its prime right now. It's freaking unbelievable, the amount of money that's being poured into the fraternity derby market with barrel horses.
Okay, so let's chase that rabbit a second.
Yeah.
I mean, if you don't mind, because I like just chasing the rabbit. That sounds really interesting to me.
Sure.
What is the hottest name of horses? See, now, I think you and me are a lot alike in this way.
Yeah.
Me and my brother talk about it. Have you ever watched the movie The Man from Snowy River? Have you ever heard of that? So, in that movie, I love the horses. He loved the whips.
Yep.
He's kind of a braider. He likes that kind of stuff. Well, so I'm so interested in the horses, the stories of the horses, that kind of stuff.
For me, the horses is all I care about.
Yeah.
To be honest. I mean, that's the people are, and then there's more to it when I get to that, but the people have always been the thing I hated.
Yeah.
because it steals from the purity of the transaction you have with that horse. It just does when you start using them as tools, and you have to, right? If your business is gonna be horses, most people screw that business up. I mean, they just do. It's just the way it is because they don't have the sense to figure out how to make it a marketable, profitable business.
I thought Clinton was so spot on in that episode y'all did just about how horse trainers.
It's the truth.
Just mess it up so bad.
And it hits home for me. And Clinton has turned into be one of my mentors. He's one of the guys I talk to, whether I want to talk or not. He's calling me almost every day, which is a real blessing, to be honest, because he doesn't do that. And so I got real lucky in my life to have mentors, and I got this Australian guy who just wants to teach me everything there is to know about all kinds of things, and it's real great to be able to have that. But back to what we were saying, that's the only thing that mattered when I was growing up. It was the horses, and my dad had a very authoritarian way of running the place.
Now, where did that come from? Was his parents military or like?
No.
What made him that way?
They're Western Slope, ranchers and construction, and they're just those type of people. You look at a rancher on the Western Slope from back. I mean, he was born in the late '60s, and 50-year-old man now, whatever. It's a different world. So it's a hard-nosed bunch of people. But he saw somebody run barrels in Meeker, Colorado when he was about 8 or 9, maybe even younger. Didn't know anything about it. He didn't have any connection to the rodeo world. But he, I think it was Celie Ray, maybe a lady, people would know who that is. He saw her run barrels at the Meeker Stampede Rodeo, and it triggered him to fall in love with this thing. He didn't know any of the preconceived. I mean, this is the 70s. Yeah. He's like, that's the craziest race, And in Meeker is an Indian town, right? So they were doing Indian relays. My family heritage is Native American on my dad's side. You go one generation outside of my dad, and they're full-blooded Pawnee Indian. Yeah. And that gets whitewashed out of you real quick, I found out. Right. But either way, so they're horse people. So he grew up with horsemen in his family, just not rodeo. And he roped calves, he team roped, he did all of that, high school rodeo, but he was hyper fixated on barrel horses. Don't know why, but the type of obsession that if he had steered it somewhere else, he'd be president. I mean, right. He was that charismatic, that convincing, and that far down in his convictions with these barrel horses that if it would have been anything else, who knows where he could have went. The Achilles heel of Conrado barrel horses has always been there was never a stop button. You go from, hey, we can manage 20 horses. Why the frick do we have 70? Right. And it just that's the thing that happens and soured me on the horse industry from our standpoint. But all we did is ride horses. We didn't do anything else. And if we weren't riding them, we're feeding them. If we're not feeding them, we're cleaning up their shit. Right. And that was my childhood from, walking age until about 19 when I decided I had to get away from it. Yeah. We had studs. We had horses of every level from yearlings to broodmares. And that's one of the things. If you start going through the books and you realize you got 12 broodmares, each of those broodmares cost you about $750 a month just to feed and keep them up, and you multiply that times 10, 20, plus everything else. The amount of debt that you acquire, and I don't necessarily mean just like bank debt, but you can't get out of that. And right. It terrified me because you can get so lost in the horse pursuit of having great horses that you bury yourself financially, which then buries you emotionally, so on and so forth. You don't take care of your relationships. You don't take care of your responsibilities because all you're doing is pursuing that next great horse. And at the end of the day, we were all, and when I say authoritarian, it's do as I say.
Right.
And that's it. You don't get paid. You don't, this is your contribution for being under whatever roof we might be under at that time. And we moved around a lot because we were broke all the time.
Yeah.
And, we had some of the nicest horses in the country, but we were pulling around in a rusty stock trailer because we never got ahead enough to get a decent trailer until way down the road.
Right.
So then you take investments from people on the outside, you partner with people on horses, you do all these things. And when you're pouring your soul into someone else's dream and you don't even know why, and this is no knock against my dad.
I think it's just it's a blatant, honest, transparent illustration.
It is
of how we all kids can feel in some way.
Well, that's the thing. When you're a parent, it's really easy to completely and totally neglect what your kids feel, why they feel that way. And if you don't have them bought into your dreams, you can't expect an 8-year-old kid to ride 6 head of horses and all the way up until they're in their high school years doing whatever for nothing. Like, you're not bought in. It's just you just do this thing. And my dad didn't know any other way. He was on his own.
Yeah.
And I respect and will respect my dad till the day I die, because he's a true horseman, one of a kind horseman. So respected for his horsemanship in the industry. He'll go down as a legend from that aspect. Deserves it. No one taught him business. You know what I mean? No one taught him any of that. He struggled with invoicing, and we just struggled. And it's hard when you're a little kid. And we didn't live in a rural area. We were metro, very close to Denver, and just happened to have property real close to that. So the kids that we grew up with, they weren't horse kids. They weren't ranchy.
Yeah, they weren't living.
So we pull up in the dually, and it's a joke. Like, your dad drives a flatbed. What's he doing? Delivering milk? You know. And so it was always this thing. So I got in fights. You know, I was a pretty rough kid. And a mouthy little shit. And so I got myself
That's partly what makes you great at what you do today, this podcast. Like,
Yeah.
you hone some of those skills you have right now.
Yeah.
You take it for granted, but you were honing those. You may not take it for granted. I'm saying it
Yeah.
could be possible to take it for granted. That mouthy little shit is actually very valuable to the industry today.
As an adult, if you can figure out who you are, that's true. I couldn't, not at that age. I was a head case. And you'd mentioned something to me out in the hallway that resonated with me a lot. You had said you could rope with the best of them, but you didn't have the mental game.
Yeah.
I mean, I had a lot of people put a lot of energy into me to help me rope calves really well. My dad had to force it because I refused help. He said, you need to call so-and-so. You need to call Jay Ellerman and ask Jay Ellerman if you can come over and rope. I wouldn't do it. You need to call so-and-so. They got 50 head of calves. They want you to come rope with them. And I wouldn't do it. It was like, I'm too proud to have people help me. And most of it was shame because we didn't have a lot of money. And the only time I was successful rodeoing is we didn't own rope horses, even though my dad was a hell of a... He would turn steers for people all the time. He was that guy who wouldn't pick up a rope for 2 to 5 years and could go out there and turn a steer for, an 11 heeler.
You know what? I'm going to say something. I'm curious with... Let's just bat this around. Do you think some of the best head horses in the business today are reject barrel horses? Are they bred they're actually as good as they are thanks to the barrel horse thing exploding?
So there's way better people to answer that, but I mean, this is a funny thing. I've been looking for, and I've got plenty of connections to get one. I'm like, hey, find me a NFR caliber head horse that I can have on the side. It's hard to find that. People don't want to give them up, but there's a lot of top-tier head horses who are reject barrel horses, just like a lot of the top calf horses and heel horses are reject reiners and cutters.
Yep, absolutely.
Right? They're a well-bred barrel horse, and it's a newer concept, right? Because things you need for a really good head horse is not the same thing you need for a good heel horse or a good tie-down horse. You need a big, strong, quick horse. Yep. So on that, yeah, it makes a lot of sense that if you had a big 16-4 reject barrel horse that's bred to the nines that can run like no other, strong, of course that would likely make a good head horse.
Pretty good. Yeah.
But that's something you do if you have barrel horses, right? You try to find other jobs for the rejects. And so one of the things that we would do is we would always turn them to head horses.
Yeah.
We always did that. You'd send them off, let people rope off of them. They'd come back and you'd have half a head horse. Hell, you can look at some great barrel horses right now. My sister Ivy's horse, J-Lo, is a jam-up head horse. Not a lot of people know that.
Right.
But she's a jam-up head horse. So, yeah, that is a thing. And there's a lot of roping husbands out there with barrel horse wives who rope on their wives' horses.
Oh, yeah.
It's actually not a terrible thing to take a top horse and force them into another discipline for a little while.
I had, and this is another thing I didn't understand when I was rodeoing. I had one of the best, ranch raised. This horse spent his first 8 years on the ranch. Never even thought about any other thing. He just did ranch work, gathering cattle, sorting cattle. That was all that was in his mind. He made a calf horse just bam, in no time. And he was, I totally did not give that horse enough credit for how really great he was.
Well, the great ones, the great horses never get the credit they need until you lose them. I mean, they do more now, but back in the day, I mean, I had an amazing head horse. I think it was the only rope horse that we actually owned that didn't belong to somebody else when I was a kid. And I never appreciated that horse till he was gone because I never had another one that could have got me where I needed to go. It's different now because you can almost project what a horse is going to be, and the rope fraternities and the bloodlines on the rope side have progressed so much. Same with the barrels. I mean, barrel industry is just second only to cow horse. There's nothing like it, and it's unbelievable. But now you can almost, like a chemist, with a pretty reasonable idea, produce a horse that you know at least is going to give you a good shot about being jam up.
So what's the trick to? So why doesn't everybody do that?
Money, just like everything.
So, yeah, all right, good.
Some people can, but a lot of people can't. So the people you see going down the road that are top tier rodeo people, a lot of those horses don't belong to them unless you're Haley Kinsel or somebody like that, or Brittany Posey, who just has an amazing barn full of horses. But you'll see people jump around, and one of the most difficult things with the horse industry today is it's not as accessible for top tier horses to your average Joe.
Yeah.
You know, I was just on a phone call when I walked up here looking at two prospects, and the price of just those 2-year-old prospects, because of the name on the papers and the incentives they're paid up in, is, you know, we're talking mid-5 figures. You're talking $50,000 for a dice roll for a 2-year-old.
Yeah. I mean, who might go cut their foot off just accidentally.
Well, that's the thing about horses, right? They're still a flight animal, and they are an animal. We get really enamored by them because of how attached we are to them. But at the end of the day, yeah, they're an animal. If you open that gate, they'll be gone, and they may never come back. Now, we feed them, we do that. They probably will, but the idea is still the same, right? You turn that horse out in the pasture, and it decides it doesn't want to come back. It's going to forget you ever existed.
Yep.
Because it's an animal, which is amazing at the same time, but it has to be understood. And so that's why I got real off track on what we were talking about. Long story short, to get back, just to piggyback off that, the reason that until I was about 19 and a half, almost 20 years old, I thought I was going to be a horse trainer. I had set up my mind that I'm going to be broke and I'm going to work my butt off. I was riding colts for an outfit out of Greeley, Colorado, and then also riding colts for my dad. So I'd go over there during the day and I would ride 10 head of horses. The nice thing about riding at a good place like that is I didn't have to saddle my own horses. I didn't have to unsaddle them. I stood at the gate. I got on. I rode them. And I got off and did that 10 times a day. And
so
left.
what is your goal when you're doing that? Like if you're riding horses for somebody,
they're telling you what the goal is.
And that is
the owner of those horses, or in that case, they're standing there. And what I was doing is I was breaking the colts. So that horse had never been ridden. Great. We pinch them between two panels. I'd get on. I'd get their head pulled to the side in a round pin and start riding them.
Yeah.
And you do each one of those at that stage because she was a reiner. And it's the only time I ever worked in any industry other than rodeo-type horses. And because she actually did all the collections for us on all of our studs. And she asked me to ride. She's like, dang, you're handier than shit.
Yeah.
And there's a lady named Becky Fuchs, Becky Mahoney at that time, who this lady, her name was Donna Ackerman, they all rode together back in the day. And anyway, I learned how to ride from my dad, but my dad did this great thing. He sent us to Becky Mahoney to learn horsemanship.
You know, I heard you and Ivy talk about that in the first episode.
She's really well known for horsemanship.
I was like, man, I need to figure out how to send my daughters there. You know, it'd be
call her, look her up on Facebook.
I've got 3 daughters, and I'm definitely going to take that note because they're interested. I don't spend the time with them to even teach them what little kind of measly stuff I think I know.
Horsemanship is it's a base skill that I think everyone needs.
Yeah. Right?
You can get on a horse. I mean, we've seen people be successful who don't have real great horsemanship. And what is horsemanship? How do you describe that? People might have a different answer, but it's just a true understanding of a horse and how to ride it. and frankly, how to do it softly, right? There's people that I know who can get on a horse and they can't tell you if you're in the right or the left lead because no one's ever taught them.
Yeah.
They can't tell you how to pick up that horse and get them into the correct lead. Whether or not you think that's valuable or not, it perpetuates what you should do with your horses, right? When you're picking somebody to go send to put your first 60 days on a horse, you better hope they're not just some dude who's busting your colts and tying their head across and throwing them down. You want a horseman to put your foundation on these horses. That's why you got to be a horseman yourself, so you make sure you know.
Yes, that's right. If you're not, you don't know what's getting shortcutted. Like squeezing between a panel, jumping on them, pulling their head around. Why? Like, why do you pull starting a round pin?
You can. This is just the way, and like I said, they tell you what to do.
Yeah.
It was a safety reason. This was a big outfit. They had 200 head of horses.
It's time then.
So, yeah, so they had it set up where you get on in between these panels, and these horses have already had groundwork. They've been lunged. They've been saddled. 5 out of 10 probably try to buck. You know, you get on one squirrely one, he's going to try to hurt you. So it's just an element of safety. And when I say pinching them, you're just putting a panel to get on them.
All I'm really asking is about what, you know, I think there's so much value in the groundwork. Like, I think the industry, and I try to send horses to training. I just want a horseback that is not going to hurt me or my kids, and that has a chance to go on and do something else, work on the ranch, or even maybe go into the rodeo arena. I get frustrated with the industry because I believe they don't value the round pin enough. But I think
not maybe not this one, but a lot of the others do.
Well, there you go. In my experience, I feel like they're rushing through the round pin. I'm like, man, I don't care if you get on my horse for the first 30 days. Just work them, sack them out, just get them all these things, pick their feet up, make all this stuff.
It depends on what your goals are, right? If you want your horse to be the best barrel horse, you're probably not going to spend 2 years in a round pen. It doesn't make sense. You have a finite amount of time between that horse is 3 years old, you start riding it. You could be in a juvenile to win $50, $60, $100,000 within 6 months. So your primary goal is probably not going to be able to make sure that you can walk this horse through a creek. Your primary goal is to make sure that they have a good foundation on a barrel pattern. It's different with other things, but you know that's one of the things that gets missed in that industry. But if you want a good riding horse, then pop in a Clinton Anderson tape and do what he does. He'll give you the most broke horse in the world, or anybody like that. That's what their goal is. But rodeo ain't that. It's a different deal, right? It's got an element of wild to it, and you'll hear the jokes about barrel horses. It's not so much rope horses or what have you, but most of those rope horses have that foundation because they came from a cutting place or a reining place, you know, unless they were bred specifically for that. But the people sell cutting rejects, 2 or 3 year old cutting rejects to big team rope and outfits like you wouldn't believe. It's normal. It's just a normal thing. That's where you get them from, at least some of them. But horsemanship's one of those core values that you can never take away. It's like a degree.
Yeah.
That's what I equate it to. It's a Western degree. If you have that in your back pocket and you get to the lowest, and that's what I've got it in my back pocket. You get to your lowest point, you lose everything. You can hang a freaking sign. You can hang a freaking sign. You can put an ad on Facebook, will take colts, will break colts. Someone's going to send you horses, and you can at least keep yourself alive. So it's like that college degree. You can walk in with that bachelor's degree. Not so much now. College degrees aren't what they used to be, but and at least have that to get your foot in the door.
Yeah. I think that's so true, and it's just a great illustration of everybody think about, make sure you've got that thing in your pocket. It might be horsemanship, it might be welding, it might be, it could be a lot of things. But if you go plop to the bottom, you need to be able to reach in there and pull something out that's of value. All right, so what I wanted to ask you a little bit ago is, what is the top 3 horses right now in the barrel race world? Let's say studs. I'm talking about breeding, right? I mean, the horses that are out there running.
Riley, come here. Riley's a barrel racing fool. I want Riley's opinion, right?
All right,
because
we'll get her.
You're never going to be able to discount Dash to Fame, Frenchman Guy, those type of horses, but you've got a lot of other ones right now. What do you think is the top 3 right now, Riley?
I mean, I'd love to pull up
just out of your brain. Don't try to fire up that stupid computer.
Okay, I'm just going to throw some names out. Say, I like them. Dark Kelly.
Well, so Dark Kelly was ours.
Really?
Yeah, Dark Kelly was ours, so I could speak to that. Dark Kelly's not what Dark Kelly used to be. Go back 5-6 years, totally different story than right now. And Darkelly's he's passed.
Right. Yeah, I was gonna breed to a mare.
Throw me that iPhone right there.
Let's
Riley.
see. I had another horse in mind. Okay, Corona Cartel.
Old.
See, I'm gonna get old.
So
right?
you're going
I
back
know.
in the
I'm
day.
too
That's what
old.
you're doing.
See, I guess that is my nostalgia for the breed. I think.
Yeah.
I
And there's
wanna
nothing
find
wrong
the
with
old
that.
horses. So
Well, what's interesting is, especially with the incentives, like if you go through some of the futurities last year and you look, there's not necessarily one stallion that's completely dominating them.
No.
Like at the BFA, I mean, you had, I think there were 2 studs that had 3 back. And other than that, most...
hold on, timeout. We got to get you on the microphone, so because everybody listening is going to say, "Man, I wish I could have heard what Riley was saying because that was all the good stuff."
But she's right, and what you're getting is you're getting different crosses off of those. Those are like core horses from back in the day you just named. You know, it's like Dash to Fame. You've got so many different versions of Dash to Fame or Frenchman's Guy that have been dropped down. You know, of JL Dash to Heaven, of Epic Leader. You've got all these different horses, and then you've got crosses on those horses that are now sires that are produced that are paid up in the incentive. So there's never been more diversity right now. You go back 10 years, and everything's dominated by Dash to Fame, Frenchman's Guy for the most part, right? You go back another 10 years, you've got horses like Corona Cartel and Firewater Flit and these different horses that those are the direct lines everybody went to. That's not the game anymore. You've got all these amazing crosses. You would agree with this, right?
Yeah, well, and you've got mare power right now in a quantity that I don't think you've seen before. And there's just so many quality stallions. Like, the breeding program and the breeding in the barrel horse industry has just skyrocketed. I mean, there's so many options. It used to be, you know, you had a handful of really, really top-notch studs.
5, maybe 6 that were known enough that, because you also didn't have this element of you had to have these paid incentives to even compete. That's a new thing, and we might be speaking gibberish, but it's important to know, especially if you're investing in horses like we are. You got to know that. You had mentioned, like, from a business standpoint with me, I hadn't got involved personal money only. I mean, I've been partners on horses with everybody in my family. I've owned plenty of horses, but for me, like, I hadn't started being willing, just because of my age, and to invest actual money into horses, and now I am. Now I'm spending money on barrel horses. Not because I want a barrel race. I'm not going to touch them, but I'm going to put them in the hands of the people who are winning money that I have good relationships with that'll steer me and my family and whoever in the right direction to make sure you get the right horses.
Yep.
So, but this is a tricky thing, right? This is one of those topics that I would talk out of both sides of my mouth, because you have to determine what your goals are. And it was really funny. You had sent me over that you want to talk about Bitcoin and cryptocurrency and stuff.
right, yeah.
And, you know, so I don't know when you're going to get to that, but I have a good point, a whole bunch of points around.
Well, let's
around
make
that,
it. I
but-
mean, why can't we talk about it now? We can come back to horses. I mean, we're
can.
not going to forget about horses.
No.
Anyway,
Anyway,
what do you think about Bitcoin?
Bitcoin in 2022 or Bitcoin in 2013, you know, because there's a big difference.
Well, I guess really only today, because we can't go back to 2013. If we could, we'd
No.
all grab it.
Well,
And
that's
by the
right.
way, if this is running long or
No,
something.
it isn't. It's just one of the
All right, cool,
things
no
when you
problem.
set your phone down, people start blowing you up. But cryptocurrency is an interesting thing, right? And you have to really break that down, because it's one of those things that everybody's an expert, but no one's an expert on. And if I'm being real honest, I think crypto might be a moot point in our industry, because here's the thing about cowboys and cowgirls: if they got extra money to invest, they're buying fucking horses. They're buying horses. They're not investing.
Right.
You know, that's been my biggest beef with people in the Western world, and why I left it. Why I left my dad's ranch is because there is no way I'm going to achieve any financial stability or achieve my goals outside of being a rodeo cowboy if I stay. Not because I didn't believe in it, not because of that, but I had other aspirations.
Yeah.
We grew up poor. I never wanted to be poor. Yeah. So I put down all that and I bailed.
What'd you go do?
I did a bunch of things. I never had a real job outside of riding horses, so I went and I got really lucky. And this is kind of funny, kind of embarrassing, but I didn't have any money. And in fact, when I left my dad's place, I didn't have anywhere to live. I was lucky. I was dating my girlfriend at the time, now wife, and her folks let me move into their basement.
Yeah.
Because, you know, they love their daughter. And like, well, if they want this little ranchy son, if she wants this stupid ranchy son of a gun, then I guess we're going to have to help him. And so they did. And she was a big supporter in helping me be brave enough to leave my dad's place.
You know, that's I think that's, I mean, you just say so much smart stuff that I want to just explore and get.
Yeah.
But I know there are kids out there today living that truth, like
most of
brave enough to get out from under a kind of, you know, a type A parent, or, you know, somebody that.
Well, it's just your family ranch is your family ranch. And, you know, the thing with our ranches, they were never actually ours. So it's not like it was the Duttons. You know, this wasn't Yellowstone. This was 30 acres in Hudson, Colorado that really was under it was a partnership deal. It doesn't even matter. Neither here nor there. It didn't look good for me.
Yeah.
We spit out interns like you wouldn't believe. Some of them went on to do well. Some of them didn't. We worked 7 days a week. Christmas didn't start until after chores were done. We didn't go on vacations. A lot of times we got told no, or I got told no on certain sports and things like that just because it would interfere.
Yeah.
And so I had a terribly bitter taste in my mouth for horses, for rodeo, because all it had done is cause me personal pain.
Right.
As an adult, I appreciated it. I saw the vision, why he was doing it, why we were doing it, but we weren't included on that vision. It wasn't my idea. It was pain.
Yeah.
All of it was pain.
Yeah.
Sorry, this a gun never stops.
Yeah.
But
Well,
anyway,
that's when you're running a business. That's true too, right?
It is.
Your phone. There's people. You know, you're looking for horses. You're just a guy with your hands in a lot of things. It makes sense that phone is such a connecting thing. It keeps you. Luckily, you can do this podcast because you can do that phone. You can have all kinds of business.
that's
going
true.
on.
Yeah, but I mean, so getting back to that, I had to escape. It was the only way for me to figure out how to have a life, and it caused a lot of strife, a lot of chaos. I probably didn't execute it in the best way, but of course I was 19 years old. Who does when they're 19?
Right.
I didn't know anything. I didn't make a good decision ever at that point in my life. I got kicked out of different schools. I was fighting. I was not doing schoolwork. You name it, I was doing it, and it wasn't right, and most of us were that way at that age. But I got away. I had people who probably wouldn't get much credit, who deserve it, help me, like my now wife, who was just my girlfriend at the time, who I did her wrong on every level because all I cared about was horses. And so I left. They helped me kind of get things figured out. I worked at some jobs. You know, I went and worked at a clothing store because, you know, I was like, well, here's a clothing store called The Buckle. Here's the great thing about that store. Terrible clothes, by the way. Don't go there. Don't buy their shit. But what I didn't know when I applied for that job, and they gave me an opportunity because they're like, well, what do you have for job experience? I ride horses.
Yeah.
Okay, well, you don't really look the part. You're kind of cute in the face. I guess we'll let you have the job. And it turned out the job was commission only. So I walked into a sales role, a commission sales role. And it sucked. You didn't make much money. But I learned how to make what would be the equivalent of like $15 an hour maybe at that time,
Right.
which working from zero, it was pretty impressive. So I did that for a while. I did some oil work, rode some more horses, worked my way up. Ended up in car sales because that girlfriend who was running the National Honor Society at University of Colorado, well, another dumb decision. Oops, her. Now, we'd been together for 2.5 years. We had got a small place together. Anyway, I got her pregnant.
Yeah.
This is something I never talk about because, well, it's private, but I will because it actually, a lot of people get in that situation.
Yeah.
And I had pretty much turned away from every moral area in my life. Not that I was being bad or anything, but I certainly turned away from the idea of Christianity and God because it was another one of those things that was forced on us and it happens to a lot of kids.
Church.
Religion,
Every time it's
church,
open.
it gets forced on you and you don't really know why. And if you have questions, you're not allowed to ask them. And it's just, well, that's just the way we do it. You get in there, you sing those hymnals that you don't like, listen to a guy who maybe he doesn't have any merit at all, depending on where you're at, to tell you what's in this book that you haven't even read yourself, which I believe in God. I believe in our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, all that. I am not a religious man, though. I'm a faithful man. I'm a little rough around the edges, a lot of us are, but I believe in God and all that. But one thing I don't believe in is sometimes the human element and how it gets twisted and gets portrayed. And unfortunately, that's how it happened in my life. There was a lot of do what this book says, even though I'm not doing it.
Oh, yeah.
Which sours you.
Sure.
And I went to a Christian school, not because I wanted to, because my dad thought I should. He thought he was doing the right thing for me because, like I said, I was a rotten son of a bitch. And so he was like, this place is going to fix him. All I did was get thrown out.
Yeah.
Because they hit you with this dogma, and depending on who it is, and there's some amazing. We're so lucky in this world. We've got the Corey Rosses and the Jordan Weavers and these different people who are just
Trey Johnson,
obviously amazing, handy with a heel rope too.
Yeah.
Who can break it down for you? But that's not all churches. That's not all pastors.
Well,
So-
and even those guys aren't perfect. Right?
They're not.
I mean,
they won't never say they are.
they won't. But people start, that. They start getting this in their mind that, all Christians think they're better than everybody else. Actually, I heard something like this. If you think you're perfect, you're not, you don't need to come to church. We're only interested in people that have issues and believe in grace.
God,
and,
if only all these mega churches followed that.
Yeah.
They don't, unfortunately, but that's neither here nor there. Anyway, so I went and I did that, and I kind of just worked my way up through different things to try to make a living, and then I just found out that, oh, hell, I can talk with the best of them.
Yeah.
I can sell ice to an Eskimo, so that's what I did. And left my horses, left all my saddles in the barn, and was like, I'm never going to be a cowboy again. Why would I? This is like, I've never made money like this before. I've never had anything. Holy shit, I just bought a brand new pickup. I never thought I was going to have my own pickup. Wow, I've got my own place. Holy crap, I never thought I'd have my own place. And so I was like, why would I ever go rodeo again? Toss the boots, put on whatever.
Whatever and go.
Yeah, whatever. Just feels like this feels good. This is something that I control. No one's telling me how to do it. But it created this pain inside of me, a different pain, right? And it gets a little philosophical. And like I said, I don't talk about this stuff. But, and my wife at the time, I was way too young to be married, shouldn't have had kids, but like,
so what? You're there now.
you're there.
What are you going to do?
You got an opportunity. You could walk away, or you can be a man and you can handle that shit. And I thank God that she did have that kid who is now my 7-year-old son. I was 22. It's like great. We're repeating a generational curse. Great. My parents had kids too young. Now I've got a kid at too young.
Right.
Perfect. Well, if that wouldn't have happened, I wouldn't have cleaned my act up, and I wouldn't have done all those things and set aside stuff which now put me where I am now. But as soon as my sister Ivy started being successful, and I realized that somebody with my last name could make it to the NFR, I got jealous.
Yeah.
And I got bitter because no one ever invested in me the way that they invested in Ivy, right? I had to borrow people's horses to go rope. Of course, I wasn't thinking about the fact that every time my dad told me to call someone to go rope, I refused to do it.
Right.
I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to
Maturity
go rope
is
with them.
the craziest thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like when you get past all that jealousy, animosity, me, and you get a little maturity and you think, man, why didn't I just listen to some of that?
But I think everybody can relate. Like, your 6-time world champions maybe can't relate to this because they're cut from a different cloth, but your average person who likes this or wants to be a part of this, doesn't know how to get into it, if they can't relate, let me rephrase that. If they're going to get anything from you got to be honest. So whether 5 people listen to this or 500,000 listen to this, whether they care or not, like, hey, I bet you somebody can relate to being a dickhead like I was. And it wasn't because I wanted to be. It was because I was the most insecure kid ever, because I had no identity as a kid. I had no identity. I wasn't anybody special. I wasn't treated like I was. In fact, I wasn't invited into most of the conversations. It was go clean those stalls. Go unsaddle those horses. Hey, we're going. You stay here. Here's your chore list.
Yeah.
And there's an element of discipline that offered me, but I only saw it as being slighted and like I wasn't important. So it destroyed my whole image of myself, because I had no self-respect, because I didn't think I was worth anything. And it took me 10 years, 15 years, well, not 15. Well, I just turned 30, so about 10 years to figure out that wasn't the case. And a lot of the animosity you have towards your parents They're just doing their best. They don't know what they're doing.
You just nailed it. I'm so glad you said that, because I was in my brain. I'm thinking, like, I'm not going to hate on Kelly. He's only doing the best he knew how, right? I mean, but you hear the same thing from Ivy, like in y'all's conversation. You know, I felt like Dad didn't think I was good enough to even feed a horse and care for it. You know, so in every parent's journey, I'm doing that to my kids, although I don't want to or mean to, or, you know, but it just inevitably happens because we're humans.
Yeah, and I mean, there were other things that just, looking as an adult, were just not right, but everything, and I hate to say it, everything I was insecure about came from that ranch.
Yeah.
And I had to figure out a way to feel like I was worth anything. And my sister Ivy had to do the same, which is why we're so close. Yeah. Anyway, getting back to it, she did something amazing. Because a lot of times, if you got no money and you only got your own horse, you ain't going far. And they damn well had no money when she started going down the road. Yeah. And she just persevered in a way that a lot of people haven't. And I didn't recognize that at the very beginning. I loved her. I wasn't like mad at her. I was like, this is amazing. But no one gives a shit about me. You know, This is a 22-year-old guy saying all this. Like, holy crap, I just worked 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. on a car lot. This is embarrassing. I'm meant for more than this, not realizing how lucky I was just to have a job, because it was another person who gave me an opportunity when I had no experience. And I made the best of it. And so I got bitter. I got emboldened that I was going to, all right, now I got to figure out what I'm going to do, because ain't no way this is where I'm living my life. I'm getting in the truck and the trailer and I'm rodeoing again.
Yeah.
And so what I did, and this is a terrible, terrible thing, and the only reason I'm bringing it up is don't make this mistake. Somebody don't make this mistake. I did drop what I was doing and put all my energy into that. So the first person I call is my dad. Dad, I need a calf horse. So he pulls a string or two, and I drive all the way from Denver, Colorado, down to Stephenville area or wherever it was to pick up this horse. Didn't know what it was. I didn't have the money. I didn't even have a horse trailer. I borrowed a trailer from somebody, hooked it up to a pickup, and drove down. Didn't have the money for the fuel and all that. And I'm 22 years old with a wife and a kid and car payments and a house and just this crap. Working in an industry where you start at zero every month, it was real stupid.
Yeah.
And so I spent money I didn't have to get this horse, and it was all to try to prove a point or to try to get approval from someone. Maybe it had nothing to do with me. And long story short, of course it didn't work out. And I screwed up my entire relationship with my wife. Basically lost my wife. We corrected that. That's a sad little story. Created so much fear in her that she was going to get abandoned and our kid was going to get abandoned, because let's be honest, that happens in rodeo.
How else could you perceive what was happening if you're her, right?
Exactly. Did I see it that way? I'm like, no, like you're not on the team.
I'm taking you to the moon with me because I'm fixing to go win the world 10 times. I mean, we all get in these kind of mental spaces.
You do. And it's when it comes from a place of jealousy, not from your heart, that you want that, you ain't going to do it. Which is why as soon as I started entering rodeos and this horse was lame and it wasn't what he needed to be, and I thought I could put 6 months on this supposed finished calf horse, he wasn't. Then I go and I enter a couple circuit rodeos and can't figure out why I didn't place. What did you think was going to happen, you dumbass? You know what I mean? Right. You put all your responsibilities on hold and you grabbed a rope and you pushed everybody around you who did care about you and wanted you to succeed to impress people who were too busy in their own journey.
Yeah.
And it was a big lesson, because that's when my whole life turned around and I had an opportunity to start a business and leave that. And that's what I did, which then led to me making the connections to be able to start the Gauge and build actual wealth and do things that actually further goals and dreams. And now I can do what I want at a young age. But it's a long way to get back to the crypto thing.
I love it, man. I'm so happy with this interview already. It's just awesome. See,
people go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I think crypto is not a mute thing for the industry, because there's going to be crypto millionaires who have had every experience in the world, and now they need a new one, and the Western lifestyle could be that.
That's already
experience for 'em.
happening. Not necessarily crypto millionaires, but regular billionaires are buying the American. They're buying the BBR.
Yeah.
They're buying 4-6 Ranch. I mean, it's over.
Yeah.
The billionaires are here, and thank God they are. Some people are scared of that, but you don't understand what that money being injected into this industry is going to do for everybody involved. It elevates. But going back to what I'm saying, and I do agree, I think there's opportunity, but Bitcoin's opportunity, we're talking, I mean, if you had the money, if you're a cowboy or a cowgirl and you got 20 grand in the bank, find me one who's going to say, I'm going to buy 5 Bitcoin with that 20 grand. Not that that's the price. I know
Right,
it's,
sure.
it bounces anywhere from 20 to 40 now, but let's say that they could buy Bitcoin. Or they can buy a couple horses. Find me one who's not going to buy the damn horses.
Well, they're going
That's
to
my
buy
point.
the thing they understand.
That's right.
I would encourage everybody, and I'm an example of it. I put some money into crypto, turned 5,000 into 20,000.
Yeah.
And the only reason I even put the money in is because I want to be educated.
Yeah.
So I was totally willing to lose the 5,000. I didn't even care. I just wanted to be educated. So I think they're super smart. If you feel, I think you should only put your money into things you feel confident you understand and know.
Well, that's the hard part is even when you know it, you don't really know it. And here's the problem, and I'm only going to say the negative before I say the positive, with crypto, with NFTs. Bitcoin, not so much, but the others, right? It's all propped up by the people who are involved in it. NFTs are a perfect example. That'll fizzle out at some point. The people who are creating and buying these NFTs are these big people with social media platforms, begging. It's like the lonely housewife who wants to go sell Avocare, right? They're like an MLS. They really are. And, the people on top are promoting the people on bottom to keep feeding them. And crypto's not necessarily that way because it is actual currency in a way. But I don't like what crypto and these NFTs have done to working people. They're getting rid of them. It's creating a laziness out there where people are like, I'm just going to get in crypto. And you talk to any 20-year-old, not cowboy, just regular dude off the street, because I got another business, and I got people working for me telling me why I need to get into crypto or why I need to buy NFTs. I'm like,
do you ever mention your other business? What is that?
I do, yeah. I mean, it's not as relatable to the Western world. I tried horse trailers, but it's a custom trailer dealership platform. We have 3 locations throughout the U.S., Colorado, California, Texas, and we sell high-end, all aluminum race car trailers, conversions, toy haulers. It's all around the race car industry and like that. So it's a different thing. Like I've got 14 employees sitting 10 miles up the road. That's where I came from to here, and I bounced between the two. And anyway, we got that. But
so did your stint in the car business?
That's what made that connection.
Yeah, lead you into that? Cause
it did. It gave me the opportunity. The man who started that business is one of I've got 3 people I would consider mentors. He's my first. And he approached me to work for him. When he started his business, he bought cars from me.
Yeah.
And or work trucks from me. And he's like, yeah, you want to come work for me? No. Eventually, you want to be the manager of this place? No. Well, I want to grow it and expand it, and you impressed me more than anybody else, and we kind of built a friendship. He's way older. I don't have any friends my own age, really, but he, long story short, gave me an opportunity to buy into the company. Didn't have money, figured it out.
Right.
Next thing you know, like we've built it into something crazy together.
So how'd you figure it out? See, this business stuff is also part of the
I borrowed money. Yeah, the only thing that
from a bank? I mean, did you have the kind
from
of
a bank and from people? But yes, so that's the most important thing that a young person can do that is missed in this industry because we live hand to mouth so much. I know so many horse trailers who can't go get a credit card. They got to have somebody buy their truck, co-sign their truck. They get one of the owners to do it or finance their trailer for them, barter this or that to get a pickup or a trailer. Thank God I had my wife, whose parents set her up. They're like, here's your credit card at the age of 13. We're going to build your credit so that you're good to go.
Yep.
That rubbed off on me. So one thing we never did, no matter how little money we had, and most of the money we lost was because of me, making bad decisions with money, but we never missed a payment on a damn thing.
Well, see, that's just integrity. I think that's the cowboy perspective. It's almost a code. It's like that was drilled into me as a kid.
Yeah,
It's like,
it's split down the middle. you've got that integrity, those cowboys, and then you got that horse trader mentality. And there's no specific person, but there's the other side of the industry because I've got caught up by them. If you've done anything with horses, you've got caught up by the wrong person that you got to look out for who screws you.
Yeah.
And I hate that. I hate that there's people out there who prey on wealthy people. I hate that there's people out there who prey on the goodwill of others, and there's a lot of that in this industry, and that's a dangerous thing. But as far as that goes, I took care of my credit, and I had some people at a little bank loan me money. I did this. I leveraged some stuff. Never missed a payment on anything. So if son of a gun.
Take it. Answer it.
What'd I tell you?
Oh, yeah, there you go. Answer it. We'll put him on the podcast. He won't even know it.
And he'll drop the C word 7 times, and then your listeners, you'll lose them all. But long story short.
I love how you just figured out how to make it work. Like you had an opportunity to get in a business, own a piece of a business.
You take it. You may never get it again. You drop what if someone says, or if you see something and you don't take it, you already lost at life. That is the number one thing that you must do. And I'm not saying that if someone gives you an opportunity to buy some amazing prospect that's what you do. That's different. But if someone gives you an opportunity or there's an opportunity that presents itself and you're too chicken shit to do it, because I've been too chicken shit to do a lot of things up until a certain point. We all just are inherently, maybe not all of us, but you got to do it.
Yeah.
You may only ever get that one chance, and you never know what that one thing leads you to. That one decision I made to drop those horses, leave those horses in Colorado, get on a plane and live in a hotel in Texas for 3 months, to start a business that had nothing to do with rodeo, wasn't get any attention for it, but it was going to put me with another sphere, a sphere of people, and create a life that nobody in my family had ever had. And so that's what I did, and it's a wild success, and there's been up and downs. COVID hurt it really bad. We bounced back from that, just like everybody, but if I hadn't done that, then the gauge wouldn't exist.
Sure. Like, I think that's a great illustration to all the listeners that do it. Owning a piece of something, a business, is a great way to get yourself unhinged from this working for the man. You know, gets you into a position to build some real wealth for yourself, so you can start a podcast if you want, or do whatever it might be your dream. Invest in a horse. You got to get to a place where you can take it or leave it.
Well, and that's the thing. You got to understand why, and it may not be the job might not be your passion. The business, my damn sure isn't. I don't care about race cars, but my customers do.
Yeah,
and I know them better than anything else, other than maybe horses. But and you wouldn't think that you could go to YouTube and type in complete trailers, and you'd see a video that I did walking through a race car. A race trailer in Maricopa, Arizona at the racetrack. You're like, that's not Chance.
Yeah.
He's wearing Vans. And, well, the people who come on the show, they'd see that all the time. Like, wow, you really don't look the part. It's like, well, yeah, I live different lives.
Sure.
And it wasn't my dream for myself or my passion. What was my dream and was my hope, and I think is most people's, if they sit down and recognize, is freedom.
Yeah.
Some type of freedom. And everybody's definition is different. Not everybody's going to be Casey Field and be a 6-time world champion. You know, there's a lot of people who went to the NFR just one time, made that $10,000 that one time, and they could never do it again. And that would have been me if I made it. And right. I have to recognize that, and a lot of us do. But what I did do, and I think this is most people, is, you know, a lot of people will say this old saying, you know, people work to live, they don't live to work. And that's right, but you kind of got to live to work for a little while if you ever want to live at all.
I don't know if you listen to other podcasts, but you're saying something. I listen to a guy named Ed Milet. He does this podcast.
Fallon Taylor's been on his show before.
Okay, so the most recent episode I've listened to his show was with Mike Rowe, the guy that did Dirty Jobs. He said that exact same thing. He said,
I've never listened to Ed other than that time Fallon went on there, but I probably should. People have told me to.
Check that episode out because Mike puts it just like that. He's like, look, you have to learn to take your passion with you to your job. Like, you're not going to get to make money every time with your passion, you know?
Well, so what if your passion's basket weaving? You know what I mean? It's like, or your passion's barrel racing. Well, that can be your passion and it not be your career.
Yeah.
In fact, that's how it should be for most people. Otherwise, you're going to live a life of disappointment unless you're a select few people, and if you're not willing to be honest with yourself, anybody in the world could be a Haley Kinsel if the stars aligned properly and you were willing to do what she was willing to do, or an Ivy Conrado, or a Sherry Servey, or a Tough Cooper, or a Joe Beaver, or whatever. It's not that glamorous, and they'll tell you that, but their passion just happened to work for them.
Sure. And look, it also matters what your vision of success is, what your vision of happiness is for you, right?
Well,
I have a certain requirement of money for me to live what I want in the realm of success and happiness.
Well,
Some
money and your outlook on money might be the most important thing in your entire life. Because if you covet it, if you desire it too much, if you crave it, like on a lustful, weird, I don't know what I'm trying to say here, but if you crave it in that way, it's going to be elusive. And you'll chase it, you'll never have it. When you do have it, you'll burn it. And what you have to realize, just like the carpenter needs his hammer to do his job, money's a tool.
That's right.
It's a tool.
It's one of the
you
kind of, you just answered one of the questions I always ask on the show, which is, what's the value of $1 of Bitcoin to me? You're painting the picture of the value of $1 to you. A tool. It's a thing you need to know how to use. What good is it? What bad is it? All those different things.
Yeah. I mean, if you've got stacks of hundreds and you're freezing to death, now it's a tool to keep you warm.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's just a tool. Don't covet it. Don't obsess over it. If you have the opportunity to make a lot of it, you should. You should be generous with it when you have it. But it is a tool at the end of the day, and just like you need nails to build a house, you got to make sure you have enough nails to finish the house.
That's right.
Your life is that house. You have got to have money to do that. And you shouldn't be ashamed if you're able to get it, right? Especially if you come from a place where you didn't have it. If you acquire wealth, you shouldn't brag about it. You shouldn't tell anybody what you got. But you got to be proud that you have that tool and that you can utilize it. Yep. Now, to bring
enjoy
that back,
the freedom that brings.
Well, freedom, we got one shot at least on this earth.
Yep.
You know, there's obviously the afterlife and all the amazing concepts that go with that, and I mean, determines a lot of the way you're going to live that life. But as far as in this body, you get this body for one round. And do you want to get to the age of 65 and have to go greet at a Walmart or work at a feed store? God forbid you're going to try to ride horses at that age. You don't want to be that. And so you need to make sure that you use that tool to the best of your ability, which brings me full circle on the crypto thing. It's just kind of a joke, but it's like, find me a cowboy or a cowgirl who's going to spend their money on crypto when they could buy horses. They ain't going to do it. When I'm talking about regular people, because I know a lot of regular people have been successful with it, one of the things that happens if you're on the internet at all is you get all these freaking people bombarding you trying to get you involved in crypto. You don't even know if they're real people. Right. But if you haven't dabbled in finances at all, I don't think your first step should be crypto.
Right, totally.
If you're living hand to mouth or you're working a regular job, I don't think you should set aside half of your living wage to try to invest in crypto. That's a terrible idea. Do you have a 401k?
Right.
If you don't talk to me about crypto. If you're not investing on the simple level, if you've got a job, let's say you work at the bay. I don't know if you guys offer 401k. I'm assuming you do.
Yeah.
Let's say one of your employees is not taking advantage of your 401k match, and he is out there blabbing his mouth off about NFTs and crypto. I'm saying this because I got a guy who does that. Yeah. I'm like, dude, you got a dollar for dollar match,
and you're not taking advantage.
And you're not even taking advantage of a simple thing. You could be doing $50 a paycheck and get a dollar for dollar match from us and dabble in real investment. You're mouthing off about a monkey wearing a hat on a digital postcard that you could buy for $2,000. There's stages to invest, just like there's stages with horses. I don't think your first horse needs to be a $50,000 horse. Right. If you've never ridden before, you don't need to do that. And you don't just start doing crypto. Maybe you could. You know, you hear the story about the guy who bought the crypto and then he bought the pizza, and if he wouldn't have bought the pizza, he'd be have hundreds of millions of dollars in the bank or whatever. you can't focus on that. You have to focus on your individual journey.
Those stories always piss me off.
They do too.
They don't happen. Like, that's just...
It's not real.
You make people think getting in today is now has some chance of being like that. You never know. Like, that is the biggest gamble. Trying to find that thing,
well,
who knows what it might be.
And it's just what you have now. If you've got a lot of false inflation in crypto now because it's not regulated. People don't realize that. Not so much Bitcoin, and certainly not like Ethereum, because that's another thing. You have to be able to, if you do make a lot of money in crypto, you got to be able to sell it. You're not getting cash, you're getting Ethereum. Right? And then, of course, you could find a way to get Ethereum turned into cash, and there's benefits to having these cryptocurrencies. But there ain't nobody in our cowboy world who's going over to the Maldives. You don't need $1 billion in crypto so you can go buy a yacht in the Maldives. Right. We're cowboys. We aren't doing that.
Right.
You're not buying $1 million horse with crypto. They aren't going to accept it. You can't even buy a house with it yet. So is it really that applicable to our lifestyles and our peoples? Not right now.
Yeah.
Should you do it? If you have the extra money. But if you haven't got outside of just buying horses or just buying pickups, you're not ready to mess with cryptocurrency.
Yeah. I think your perspective is really good. I might be not as mature with that perspective, because it just makes a lot of sense, and I've never thought about it that way. So I'm going to see, these conversations are always almost more educational and more valuable for me than even the audience. Like, to me, I do this podcast. For me, it's a great way to talk to very interesting, successful people that I want to be like. I want to talk to you because you have this awesome, successful podcast. I want to be like that, right? I don't want to steal it from you. I'd love to just come alongside you or even just help this. I'm proud of the Western industry. How can I help that be better? So,
well, that's exactly me. I'm so proud of where I came from and what it is, and I want it to be bigger and better, which is why I started the Gauge, right? I knew I wasn't going to be a world champion. I knew that. You hit about 25 and it's too late. Not everybody, but it was too late because I had a wife and a kids, and I dedicated myself to a business. I was living in downtown Fort Worth in a flat, right, in a loft. I was as far away from, other than my friends I'd go out to have dinner with who had horses and my sister, and obviously still technically owning, and your SD card just filled up.
Yeah, that's all right.
Either
we
way.
missed some of the last part of the video.
But
we still have the audio.
Yeah, which is more important.
Yeah.
But
well,
if you choose to do something like the Gauge, it takes a lot, it takes a lot of courage, right? Because one of the things, and I wasn't courageous to do it. I was going to do it 2 years before. Didn't have the balls to do it. I was too worried about the judgment. I was like, if I put myself out there and people think I'm stupid, or maybe I shouldn't talk about this stuff, well, what does he know? You have to be willing to take that judgment on anything you do. The Gauge is amazing. Thank God for it. It's given me a rejuvenated purpose to help the industry that I love, because everybody in my life, this is where we get our money, right?
Yeah.
And it's supposed to be a force for good and a force for truth. It's never been about me. That's why you're like, man, I can't find a lot of information where you talk about yourself, because it's not about me.
Right.
Just like this podcast isn't necessarily just about you. You bring people on to get their perspective. I do the same.
Right.
Or tell their story.
I think we have a very similar, like my goal with the Cowboy Perspective is very, very similar to the Gauge. The facts are, you did it better than me. You've managed to amplify it, where through either your guest selection, through either your marketing, whatever, I don't know, lever you pulled to amplify it.
It just worked out. My goal with the Gauge was to have a podcast that was as big as the biggest podcast in the world.
Yeah.
And I approached investors because I knew it was going to cost a lot of money. And most people said no, that wasn't a good idea. People that I asked that you would know if I told you who they were, and now, hindsight 2020, they should have done it.
Right.
No, that's what is that podcast was the main thing I got.
Yeah, I don't listen to podcasts. I don't know what that is. And you'll run it. I think podcasts, it'll either just poof away, totally disappear, which that's always possible, or it's in its little infancy still. Like 90% of the people I talk to, like, how do you even listen to it? Like, show me where. Okay, it's this purple button on your iPhone.
Exactly. It's the point of it is if you want to be I don't want to say important, but if you want to make a difference in this industry, there's other ways to do it besides with a rope or a saddle.
Yeah.
You can enjoy that stuff, you can appreciate that stuff, and you should do it. But if it doesn't fit with your life and you still want to be in this and you still want to make a difference, that's all the gauge. It just proves that you could do it if you really wanted to.
Yep.
I threw my nuts on the table and said, chop them off if it's not going to work, and you got to roll that dice. I asked an investor if we could partner on it. That was 12 Gauge Ranch, and they said no initially, and now they said yes, and they're really happy they did. And
Yep.
That's now my stepdad, and it's a family thing, and people have a lot of questions around that. But at the end of the day, you have to deliver, and that's the only thing I did with the gauge is bust ass, just like everything else
Right.
that we all should do. I just busted ass. Riley busted ass. Everybody who's a part of it busted ass. And now you could go on the Apple charts and you could see the gauge above Michelle Obama's podcast
Right.
some weeks, which no one especially me, I had no clue that was possible. You mean people want to hear from rodeo or people with a Western perspective that much? And we got Yellowstone to thank for that and all these different things going on. But the Western way of life in our world is to me, is one of the most important historical subcultures that exist, and it must continue. It must not go away. It is our responsibility to protect it. Some people might scoff at that, but look at this fight for the rodeo thing going on right now. You have these politicians trying to get rid of rodeos. You've had politicians trying to get rid of the beef industry, the farming
Right.
industry. They want to take away the subsidies from the farmers. They want to push everything into this Hollywood, LA mindset, this San Francisco mindset, this New York mindset that eats everything that it touches.
Yeah.
You know who they can't screw with? You ain't going to screw with the Cowboys. Yellowstone might be a little goofy, but who's whipping everybody's ass in that show? It's the damn Cowboys, and that's reality.
Yeah.
And that's why I was telling you in the hallway when we were waiting for Riley to come unlock the studio because I forgot my damn keys, that I want more Cowboys involved in the world, not just rodeo, not just our subculture, in the world. Because if you take that hard mentality that you're not going to push us around, that we're from the land, we work from the land, we are cowboy type thing, there's an element of toughness and integrity and grit that a regular person just doesn't have. And a lot of my favorite people are regular. And when I say I break things up into two people, my wife hates this. If they're not rodeo or they're not cowboys, they're just regular people. And I'm like, it's just an easy way to make a distinction. That's all I'm saying. Right. It's like a military guy calling someone a civilian.
Right.
It's like, well, all I mean when I say that is someone who isn't rodeo.
It's about your perspective.
Yes.
Like I've been writing on this blog for a long time about where opinion comes from. Right.
Yeah.
Where does opinion? Well, to me, it has to be experiences. Like
right.
Your opinion is from either your experience in real life or your experience of somebody sharing with you that you trust some piece of information. And so you are born out of the cowboy way of life, this Western lifestyle. You can't think about it really any other way, but
and I took the mentality into the corporate world. You know what I mean? I've been lucky. I've got to meet some just unbelievable and savage people who have nothing to do with rodeo.
Sure. Business
tycoons, just from the nature of somehow I came in contact with them through our business, and they don't know shit about what we do. They think I got my business partner. He makes jokes about me being a cowboy all the time because he's not. He's like a L.A. rich type. And I'm not saying that's what he is, but that is his look, right? You're gonna find him on a beach in Spain.
Yeah,
he don't own a pair of boots,
right?
And I can play in that world too. Like he just got back from Mexico at a music festival, just going nuts. 45-year-old man. And so the joke he always says if we're talking to people is, well, Chance has this podcast. Go check it out. It's about cowboys. And I'm like, you're a cowboy?
Yeah.
Well, let me slow down my words for you. And it's just a funny joke that you get if you play in the outside world. You realize that people don't think of us as like intelligent really, or like we could play the game, but we can.
Yeah, totally. It's been just this hat has made me. I want to say money, but it's not really money. It's given me a network. It's given me opportunities to meet people just like you're talking about. They're totally in a different game, have a whole different perspective, experience, all these things. And I think there's cowboy perspective in them. That's why I kind of named my podcast The Cowboy Perspective, because anybody and everybody has some of that grit, determination in their perspective. And since I'm a cowboy, I call it cowboy.
Mm-hmm. I agree, 100%.
Yep. Chance, man, I may have to come back and talk to you again because we didn't even really get to explore half of the stuff that I think is so interesting about you. Like I would just like you to, I'd like to say Joe Beaver, and you tell me, oh, this is what I remember from that conversation. Or I was thinking even Clinton. Clinton said some of the most brilliant businessman things in y'all's conversation. I hope people go listen to that episode. The two episodes with Clinton are great.
They're
for businessmen, for horse trainers, for marketers. I mean, he is a stud.
He is one of the most underrated advocates for just the Western way of life, period. I mean, the things he's accomplished, not like in the arena, but in the business world, making things accessible to people. You better put some respect on that dude's name because he knows a lot. It's just like Fallon Taylor. You better put some respect on Fallon Taylor's name.
Yeah.
You may not like the helmet and the hat and all that, but she's done something none of you suckers have done. Just so has Clinton. They found a way to take something most people fail at and go broke doing and become wildly successful and financially set off of it. You can't count on more than one hand the people who've pulled that off.
Sure.
Which
I'm
means
telling
you better listen to them.
Just the fact that Fallon was on Ed Milet, I mean, that means a billionaire catches what she's up to and says, ooh, I need to share that with my
and thought
audience.
it was valuable.
Oh, yeah.
And if you don't think you can learn something from people like Clinton or Fallon or whoever, then you got no shot.
You got to learn something right now. If you don't think you can learn something from anybody and everybody you bump into in your life, you got to audit that. Because
if you're the
truth.
smartest person in the room, you've lost the game.
Yeah.
You done lost the game. You better pray to God that he let you play again because the game's over if you've decided you're the smartest son of a gun in the room.
Absolutely. Chance, thank you for your time. Everybody, thank you so much for tuning in and listening. I can't wait to pass along some more cowboy perspective on the next episode. If you don't find any value in this one, well, somebody go help that person. They need to be woke up because there's all kinds of great experience in this man's story. And I don't care what you're interested in. Selling cars, barrel horses. I mean, we've talked about it all. Bitcoin. So seriously, tell some people if you liked it. Tell me if you didn't like it. Come back.
Awesome.